And we can begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. All rise, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first order of business is to review the minutes from the special meeting on May 24th and then the regular meeting on June 13th.
So,
You have some comments, Jeff?
I was going to say so move for.
Okay, yeah, I went through them. I think we found a very good balance between substantive information and good writing. Pamela, appreciate it very much. So I didn't see anything here of substance that needed change. So I'll move that we adopt the minutes.
I moved.
Oh, you already moved? I second.
Because you're the chair.
Yeah, I can't. I'll never get that right. Mr. Pearl, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great, so moved and done. The next item is the Deepwater Wind Solar Project, petition number 1313, evaluation, discussion, and possible action. I know that this is a big deal involved. We've been requested as a board to consider this project. I think I'd like to have maybe Sean just give us a little information about what is actually within our purview and the contribution you're looking for from us, or maybe Lisa, one of the two.
I can sort of introduce it, right? I mean, obviously, by way of Lisa's letter, all of the boards were asked if they'd like the opportunity to comment on this proposal. And I don't know if Lisa wants to, would you rather
Sure.
explain what's going on?
Council advised us to reach out to all boards and commissions. This does not go through local approval processes, and just give any board or commission the opportunity to comment. Because we feel we present the best case to the siting council, we have a full understanding of the community's concerns and issues. Oh, now I feel like Oprah. Okay. And so it's really just an opportunity for you to do so. I mean, I would assume you would look at more financial, because you're a finance board.
Right.
But we have not limited it to any areas you would like to consider.
So I guess as chairman of the Board of Finance, I would suggest that we should consider this from what is our real charter is probably too small, what our mandate is as a board, which is to review all of these kinds of projects with an eye to the impact on the operating budgets of the town, rather than to spend a lot of our time on the merits of the project or otherwise that would be further in the purview of the land use commissions and the like. So having said that, I guess I would say that our biggest concern here would be impacts upon the operating budget, primarily at the Board of Selectmen, as it relates to expenses that we might have relative to consultants and reviews and legal work that has to be done on the town, especially if the town is taking a position contrary or in opposition to the siting council's moves. So can you speak to that,
Sure.
Lisa? Thank you.
We don't yet have estimates. We do anticipate hiring a landscape architect. We'll have to get, obviously, Board of Selectmen approval. We do have some money, as you know, in the various boards for some contingencies. We do have legal budget, but this is an unanticipated project, so we may go over. We will obviously keep you abreast if that happens. At this point, I don't have estimates. We may need an environmental consultant. We're still evaluating. It's going through staff review first. We do have very professional staff who could do a lot of this in-house. Right. And most of the review is done through the siting council. We did ask the Commissioner Klee of DEP to do a comprehensive review, which they don't generally do in petition cases, but we did receive a letter from the Commissioner that they would do that through the DEP, and they do have experts with expertise in this area. So
I don't quite understand why the town is seeking to incur costs.
We're not seeking to. We have requested Deepwater Wind reimburse us. It's a major project in our local land use. The petitioner would reimburse. We have the ability to do so.
So it's because you've petitioned for status that you want to get.
So if we feel that there's something that we need independently from an evaluation to help us make our position known to the siting council. It's true, most of the burden, almost all the burden is on the petitioner, and we can certainly make requests that they provide information. But
Petitioner being Deepwater,
yes,
not you.
yes, correct. We are a party status.
Parties, not petitioner.
Yes, so one of the things I think we felt, and that the community has told us over and over again, that they care very much about how the site looks. So if this does go through, the Board of Selectmen has not yet taken a position on this, but if it does go through the siting council, how it looks will be extremely important. We know this from the planning committee, with its a scenic road view. So we did feel it was important that the town put forward at least an alternative vision for the siting council to consider on landscaping. There may be environmental stuff that we need to independently review, but it is, you're right, it is the primary responsibility of the siting council and the petitioner to provide that information for the siting council to evaluate.
So we said,
And we hope so, but council, it is taking up quite a bit more time than we negotiated with council, so it could go.
so you're doing, you said Deep agreed to do a comprehensive review, and do you know if that comprehensive review covers all the elements that you're permanently concerned about, or is the
So
town?
we don't know specifically. We asked for a comprehensive review. When I spoke with the commissioner, there was a Senate bill that was going through the General Assembly at the time that would have required a more comprehensive review. The DEP got their application in before that bill took effect. So I did call the Commissioner of Agriculture and DEP and asked them to voluntarily do that comprehensive review, and they have agreed to. The Commissioner of Agriculture verbally, and Commissioner Clean Wright.
What is the property is currently zoned,
Industrial and residential.
so it's zoned industrial?
It's about 75 acres are zoned industrial. The rest are residential, R40.
So even if our land use commissioners had authority, this would be a permitted use in the industrial, but not the residential?
So that's not clear. We have asked zoning, one of the things we asked zoning to do as part of the review is to evaluate whether this would be something that would be permissible under current zoning laws. They have taken that under advisement. As I understand, they met last night. I haven't received anything from them, but I believe they're meeting again, and they want to spend a little bit more time reviewing the petition. But we have asked specifically for that information because that is something the siting council will take into consideration, as well as whether this conforms with the POCD. Planning has just delivered a letter to me that we'll post tomorrow that says the general consensus was that they did not feel it was consistent with the POCD, but there were some aspects within the plan that might have been consistent.
Not consistent?
Yes.
Well, the POCD presumably never anticipated a solar farm in
That's right.
anybody's town. So nobody's town has something in it that says, hey, we want a solar farm.
I think that's, if you read the literature, most municipalities across the nation do not put that in their
Of course,
POCD,
no.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, go underneath the pad, though?
I don't, that's one of the things I presume the zoning committee would say, because obviously if something isn't permitted by zoning, you can always apply for a text amendment. I'm going to defer to
Right.
Rob to walk me through this, right? A text amendment or a PAD, or there are other options. But whether they would be approved ultimately by the zoning commission or recommended by the planning commission, I don't know, and they don't know because it's not before them. But they could certainly talk to the process.
So the parcel is, if you could just explain maybe, so we understand that the parcel itself, it abuts Route 10?
No, the parcels they're talking about is off County and Hoskins, and in the back neighbors. It's posted, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the petition or what we have online, but there
I
are
looked at
maps.
what you had in mind, but
Yeah.
I was just trying to figure out what's industrial, because you indicated it was on a...
Off County, if you go up County before it splits, at the Hoskin area, there are two barns on the side there, and back
Right.
there is about 75 acres of industrial.
So how far set back is it from Route 10?
Pardon?
It's pretty far set back
Far
from
from
Route 10, right?
Hoskins goes up and then
Yeah.
it splits off and county is.
So several hundred yards, right?
Oh, no, quite a bit. It's not near Route 10.
Right.
No.
And then the scenic roadway, is it designated a scenic roadway?
It is, well, I don't know specifically that the POCD does call out Hoskins as a scenic view and a scenic road, yep.
Were those barns planned on being raised?
So they have indicated that they're going to keep those two barns. There are 5 on the site. We have asked the Simsbury Historical Society to evaluate the full historical impact. There's a SHPO review that is included in the petition, and our Historical Society is reviewing that as well.
But keep in mind, if some residential developer came along and wanted to put houses there, they wouldn't need to keep those barns, neither would an industrial company, so. And I think we have to recognize that it's not, it may be farmland, although it's actually weed land right now, but it's not necessarily gonna stay that way.
So it is
The
owned, the
historical
land,
district wouldn't have any say over.
so they might, depending on what they file. So there are all sorts of rules related to SHPO, so they're doing that evaluation right now.
So the discussion's migrating to the merits of the product act, and I really want to stay away from that.
So who would be able to explain the tax ramifications?
Yes, so I
We do
think that
have
would be
Dave
great.
Gardner here, and he prepared, did you get the?
Yeah, you have in your packets, I know I sent out, but I think I stapled them. Thank you, sure. There are, I went ahead and included both Lisa, and I guess Tom Cook's letter, supplemental to Lisa's letter, and then the third page I included Dave Gardner's June 26th letter, if everyone finds it on the third page.
Yep.
So that's probably a good place to start. I mean, Dave has some more tables and that we can supplement with if you'd like. But we can sort of walk through that if that's helpful. It's estimated that the project is somewhere between $30 and $35 million. Again, there's a lot of estimates here as we'll go through this, but just to try to get a ballpark. If you follow Dave's letter here, the tax on the land itself has an assumed value. He's assuming the value of the land is $7.7 million. So that would be $192,000 of tax revenue at the current mill rate. Again, that's also subject to change, but that, of course, you don't depreciate land, so that would stay the same. On the personal property, he's assuming a standard depreciation schedule for the value, and you can see that about midway through the letter. And so in the first year you see there, well, starting at roughly 33.25%, 95% depreciated after 1 year, would generate taxes all the way on the far side, including the land, $192.5, about $1.1 million in the first year. And then, as you can see, depreciating down to 30%, and it would stay level at 30%, most likely in this scenario. I don't know if you want to comment more on that, David?
Well, the other thing is that this revision of the memo, I looked at it, again, and I said the figures in the memo actually are, the rates are high enough to include the fire district tax. So there was an Excel spreadsheet that I think you got as well, and that one is just the town. And it's put in terms of an effective tax rate, which for the personal property is just approximately the mill rate times 70%, and for the real estate, it's the assessment to sale ratio times the mill rate, which is why it's a little bit lower, 2.5%.
So that's the 028 is
Right, the 028 and the 025.
39.99 mill rate times 70%.
Right now, it's yielding, the property is paying about $190,000 a year in taxes.
No, currently, those 5 parcels
25,000.
are about 26,000 and change this year. I have to look that up.
So the project increases the value of the land?
Right, well,
it
with
takes away the
with the
farm
exception of the 49 acres to the south of Hoskins Road, all the rest of it is under classified farmland, which is a use value, and it's much lower than market value. So that's the land and the existing barns, and
How long has it been, do we know, since it's been actively farmed?
There were vegetables there in recent years, I know. I think when I drove by recently, it looked like weeds, but today, there's vegetables today? Okay, maybe I was looking at the wrong field, maybe.
David, would you be able to talk about the abatement?
Oh, that was a... I think there was a figure was thrown out from Deepwater and during the course of a conversation. There's no proposal to abate anything.
But would they be eligible for abatement?
Only if we gave it to
It
them.
would,
Only if
those
we...
selectmen would have the authority to abate the taxes if they
Okay.
wanted to.
All right.
And so in your memo, when you talk about this placeholder $300,000 abatement, the point you're making is it's a fixed flat amount, which is an increasing percentage of the taxes?
Right, right.
Wait, where's
The idea was to give an idea what percentage of that is the taxes.
He's not saying, he's just suggesting that the 300,000 applied to the 1,123,000 in the first year is,
So, yeah, why did you bring up the abatement if they haven't even asked for one?
It was a figure that they mentioned in a meeting with us. And this was, the purpose of the memo mainly was to give them advice on what the tax might be. So I used, they had a range of cost of 30 to 35 million for the equipment. They also had a range at a rate per watt of $1 to $1.05. And the memo used the top of the range that they gave us for the
Did you get a
estimate.
sense in that meeting that they're absolutely going to ask for a tax abatement and won't do the project without it, or?
No, I don't have an idea about that.
So is it up to the first selectman to?
No, there's a committee.
So the way it works is we have a business development committee that it would go to first. It includes a member from the Board of Finance. I believe Linda is that member. A member from the Economic Development Committee, a member from the business community. I can't remember who's on it. They make a recommendation, and then it goes on to the Board of Selectmen for final approval. The Board of Selectmen is the determinative.
Right, but it's not
board.
necessarily a state statute that we have to.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely
Well,
not. And we have an abatement,
Could go
yeah,
through
policy, and
Abated much in the
we
years,
have not. In fact, I can't recall
the last time.
we've done it, but there is a process, and any applicant has the right to apply for it. It's not, I can't say, I don't have the authority to say no. That's not up to me. We have a process that it has to go through. I will say, to David's point, in terms of why you're asking, a lot of communities will do pilot programs because it's a personal property. You get a depreciation rate. You'll see in David's memo, it's a high 1 million and down to 475. And so some people, for fiscal certainty, like to smooth it over time. And I think that they brought that up. So it would be about 600,000 a year in taxes if you did the smoothing. Advantage of that is fiscal certainty. The disadvantage of that is that they go out of business prior to the 20 years. Most of the taxes are paid up front, and do you want to get them and hold them? So those are just considerations that are out there.
Is there any indication that if they're denied an abatement, that they would not develop?
They have not said that
Same
to us. They haven't even come to us with an abatement. I have not been approached with a request for abatement. They did indicate that that taxes were important to them, and to one of the people who was at the meeting at the high school, I said, well, here's our process. I said, that's not something I can personally agree to.
I just hate to see the town spend money on extra services for legal and other issues if that's a condition precedent, then it's not going to happen. So I don't know when the application wouldn't even come through unless it had been approved, correct? So it's a difficult.
well, I think that's a business risk the town has to take. That's what business development's about, though, Jeff. I mean, I think it'd be naive to think that this is the only thing that they're working on. They probably are seeking approvals, and I don't know Deepwater.
Yeah, I haven't been to all the meetings. I just didn't know if if this was something.
They have
Yeah,
not
if they're
said
looking at
anything
other
one way or
business.
another, whether this is crucial to the project. Of course, all businesses would like abatements, and, but it has certainly not come before us. There is no application at this point.
And that smoothing would only, I mean, that's still subject to the mill rate and.
So
in
you
in
could
any
make
year.
it that way. I mean, there are different rules and ways. Again, they haven't requested that smoothing. This is not something we're recommending to you at this point. With the Board of Selectmen has not evaluated. It would go through, again, the smoothing, the pilot program would go through the
Oh, the
Business
pilot,
Development Committee and the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, I think we want to be careful not to negotiate with ourselves. We will negotiate with the
Precisely.
real bidder. And so, conversations on the record about what we're willing or not to do
Precisely.
are not necessarily helpful, so.
So I'm just curious, though, in terms of alternatives, what are the types of interest that there's been in the property in the last several years? And if you were to look at the plan of conservation development, the kinds of uses that that the town believes are contemplated, what would the tax revenues approximately be if they were to take the residential and put up homes, and if they were to take the industrial and.
Is that really our question to ask, though?
Well, he's asking about the tax, the financial impact.
Right, but that's a land, isn't, I mean, I think that's almost a land use issue, correct?
No. I'm trying to figure out, what are your, from a fiscal perspective,
What's the
okay, so
opportunity
if
cost?
we're to turn this down, or we're to fight this to the bitter end, I mean, you're asking for our opinion from a fiscal perspective. I'd like to know what are the alternatives for that property? What are the range of tax revenues that might be expected based on what the Plan of Conservation Development currently contemplates?
So the petition does show alternate uses in it. If you read the petition, you can sort of see, they show, I think, about 100 homes, if I'm remembering it correctly. You know what the average house in Simsbury, the taxes are, so it could be, 7,400 is the average. Maybe they build 10,000 homes, 12,000 homes, maybe they build 6,000 tax homes, I don't know. So we have not been appraised of that. They are a private individual, and they do not consult with the town as to what other opportunities they've looked at for the use. This is a sale of private land to a private company. The town really has very limited role in it. It doesn't go through local town approvals, even.
The
Yeah,
residential
I thought maybe,
portion-
I'm sorry, Joe. Go
I'd
ahead.
say this residential portion would be about $750,000 a year, then if you had built 100 homes, 750,000.
Should be $1 million if it's 10,000 each. And then, I don't know how you calculate the school children. It's about 16,000 a year to educate a child. We haven't done the analysis. David hasn't done the analysis, so I can't tell you for certain, just on the information that you know that's out there.
Then the
Yeah,
industrial-
so I was just going to suggest, I think it's important that, at least for our board, we go through, the siting council actually has the authority to approve this. This does not get approved.
That's right.
All the town really is asking, is the Board of Selectmen is going to make the choice to be a party. And in a party, we're trying to give the town a collective voice in the
That's right.
siting council's decision process. And whether that, and I don't think any decision's been made whether we want to encourage, discourage the project in front of the siting council even, is that correct?
The Board of Selectmen has not taken a position yet. We have requested all boards and commissions the opportunity to weigh in, and of course, having done that, to me, it would be disrespectful to then make a decision prior to getting that feedback.
Correct.
We are waiting to get that feedback.
Yeah. So I guess, so again, I want to try to keep this conversation within the realm of what we should be talking about, which is that we should empower the Board of Selectmen as they make this decision to be sure that they make every effort to quantify the expenses on an operating basis that will impact the towns. So these are funds that the town is going to spend in support of its role as a party in this particular project. So, and we have approval authority over that individual, those expenditures, because they will be outside your approved budget, is that correct?
They may not be. I mean, we're hoping to keep
But-
it within our approved budget.
Right, but to the extent that they would take you over that budget, then
That's
you'd need our approval.
Recommended by the Board of
Right.
Selectmen, requires 2 boards approval.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. And then I think we should also consider that the net effect of this could have a positive impact on our tax base, and so there could be an element here when those approvals come to us that will say we'll make that decision based upon the cost benefit of taking that position.
That's a
Well,
question.
In terms of a going concern, how old is the company and what's currently their oldest project in
So I believe this is their first solar project. I don't know, they've done wind projects. I haven't researched the full history of the company, but they are online and you can look them up
Yeah,
and
okay.
look into that.
I'll weigh in and say I think we should support the project going forward, and I'm not sure if support means telling the Board of Selectmen not to weigh in on it or to weigh in on it on support. But it's a significant amount of revenue. We're facing a very difficult economic picture going forward from the state, and we certainly have our own issues, even within town, of keeping our expenses and revenue balanced. And here's an opportunity to see an increase of over $600,000 a year on average over what we're getting now, with no demand on town services. And I think that's, when Jeff was asking about what's the opportunity cost, whatever the revenue might be if they were to build houses, you have to offset that by increases in demand for school services, police, snow plowing, whatever, because there'll be more roads. I mean, there will be a significant increase in expense that goes along with it. So this is a project that, creates no traffic, no noise, no pollution, no demand on town services, but gives us a bunch of money, which we frankly really need. So I think it's worth supporting, and I have seen, people, I went to one of the meetings that they held, and there were people who, and Chris has mentioned this also, concern about impact on town property values. And I mean, I have to say, I disagree with that respectfully. I know you have a different opinion, but it was the same argument we heard from people on the bike path. Oh, it's going to ruin our property values. And it didn't. In fact, it increased their property values. So, I mean, and I've said this before, if I could have solar panels as my neighbors, I would be thrilled, because they don't bark, they don't have screaming teenage parties, and they don't have splashing kids in the pools screaming, and I'd be thrilled with solar panels. So I think it's a difficult thing for the neighbors to envision, and I get, the sort of, visibility thing, and I think the company's done a lot to mitigate the visual impact. But looking at it from our perspective as a Board of Finance, I think this is a layup.
Well, okay, so I support your position, Linda, but I would say that from a Board of Finance's position, there were a lot of qualitative aspects that you are in support personally of the project. What I would like to kind of keep this focused on is I'm in support of,
I was focusing on the money.
No, I want to, the real question is, are we in support of the town being a party to the siting council? And I would certainly say I'm strongly in support of being as active a participant in this process because of the impact on the town, positive, from several aspects. Future
Well,
tax.
yeah. I guess the question, though, and I didn't interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I'm not sure, when you are saying you want them to be a party to it, do you want them to be a party to it to support it or oppose it?
He just wants them to be a part of the discussion, right? An active
Exactly.
participant, right? So we don't know what the,
And that then does get into sort of the qualitative aspects, because I think the town elected folks may be hearing a lot from, and this is always the case, from the people who are most immediately impacted.
Okay, so I'll
And
interrupt
I've
you. And I
heard
will-
from tons of people.
Yeah, but I would say that it's not for us to decide whether we're for or against the project.
Okay, I thought
All
that's
right,
what we
and-
were asked to do.
No, that's not what we were asked to do. Is that what we were asked to do? I don't think that's what we were asked to do.
So we asked for input. I mean, one of the things you could decide is this is significant benefit to the town financially. You could weigh in on that. You should know that we have already applied for party status. Some had been indicated by the siting committee that we will
Right.
grant it that. And we've requested a public hearing as well. So it is our intention, the board has voted to apply for party status.
Who else has applied for party status, do you know?
I don't know, but abutters have the ability to apply for party status.
I mean, the budding landowners, are they organized, and are they here today, and have they applied for party status?
I'm not going to speak for other abutters.
Well, have any of the landowners here today applied for party status?
I'm not an abutter.
Or have any of the, okay,
So
the
the
people who
site-
have the ability to apply for party
The
status?
siting council does post all correspondence that
that
they get.
information.
Yeah, and you can check on the siting.
I'm asking information that's pertinent to our
I don't
decision
know.
today, and I'm sorry I
Yeah.
didn't look online, but I was hoping the town would have that
I think
information.
they have plans to be filing that way.
I mean, last time that there was a significant proposal in the north end of town, I know there was a coalition of property owners who came together and who did a lot of a lot of environmental work that disclosed a significant environmental problem. And I think the property owners carried a heavy burden, far more than the town did. It was nonprofit status, it was very well organized, and they did a great service in that regard. The concern I have, and you've already
I guess
applied
that
for
would
party
be a matter,
status.
but that's an opinion, right? I mean, and I think that's what Rob's trying to get away from.
No,
Right, whether that party did a good job or not.
Well, I'm just saying, so, all right, so strike that comment, thank you, Counselor. But that said, I guess if we're looking at if the town will be a party, and you've already applied for party status, so I'm assuming we did that because we needed to preserve our rights within a certain period of time?
No, we applied for party status because it gives us an opportunity to participate in the proceedings, ask questions, present interrogatories, interview witnesses, present evidence, and also to request a public hearing so that members of the public, not just abutters, but any member of the public can speak and be heard at the siting council. They tentatively scheduled a hearing in Simsbury for September 12th. That is not definitive. But that's open to any individual in Simsbury because we thought it was very important that the public's opinions and concerns be heard by the siting council.
Okay, so then, so we're seeking party status in order to avail ourselves of those advantages, not necessarily to take a position one way or another as a town.
I think I mentioned earlier, the
They
Board of
may
Selectmen
take a
has not yet
position.
taken a position. We're waiting to hear from all boards and commissions. We've given people to the end of the month to get back to us. The building committee chose not to take an opinion because
So if they're going to take a position, they're asking us for what ours might be so that they can.
to help us
consider.
inform our decision. We feel that the more, we all see the world from where we sit.
$600,000 a good thing? Then our answer would be yes, whether
It's
if
more than
if that's the
$600,000,
right
that's-
project or not, that's not for this group to decide.
And it's not just 600,000, I think Linda
Right.
and some of the residents have pointed out, if it's 600,000, you want to look at the net effect. If it reduces property values in the nearby neighborhoods, whether you agree or disagree on that, that would influence whether you think it's a good project or not, whether you think 600,000 is significant or not. I mean, it's a $96 million budget. So it's totally up to you. We are not forcing you to take a position, or we are offering you this opportunity because we value your opinion. You know the fiscal situation of the town probably better than any board right now, and certainly, given what happened this last year, we know it way better than probably any board.
What's frustrating to me, though, right now is that it seems like we're looking at anecdotally, it could potentially have an impact on neighboring properties. I guess what I don't know is what's in the purview of DEEP, the siting council. What kind of studies are they going to be doing? What are the requirements?
Yeah, so this goes
for
again to the
approving
merits
this?
of the project.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but if we're being asked whether we want to fund overage of expenses for the town to be a party to, let's say, oppose the project, which I think is what you're getting at. You're saying, well, rather than get into the merits of the project, should we be funding money for the town if we go over our allotted budget for legal and other expenses? And it's hard for me to answer
I
that
just want to
question
interrupt you,
because
Jeff.
there's a lot we
I'm
don't
not suggesting
have.
that we would only do it to oppose the project. What I'm suggesting is that, given the significance of this impact on the town, that we should, that as a Board of Finance, we should say that we would be receptive, without pre-approving, the expense of some consulting dollars to be a participant in the process. That's all I think is in our purview today.
Well, I guess I can't answer that question because I don't know what information is going to be provided free of charge. The commissioner from DEEP has indicated they will be doing a thorough and extensive analysis. I'm assuming they'll be covering all of the environmental impacts that potentially are out there. The siting council has requirements. Again, I haven't studied this, but I don't know what information is already being provided to them. From an economic perspective, when you begin talking about impact on homes and what have you, I think you're going to be hard pressed, frankly, just based on my background and experience, to find that development of this nature, provided it's done correctly, provided there's no environmental or other health effects, is going to adversely impact homes relative to an industrial use that could also be in the backyard. And so we've heard these claims time and again, and they've really not, and I've done a lot of research and study on this, and, I guess
You're
I'm.
back onto the project.
I understand that, but I'm hesitant to be paying for consultant fees to be
We
authorized.
have not made a request.
I know you have not, but you're asking us for what we're likely to do, and I'm not.
I think what they're asking is they're saying there's a revenue source out there of $600,000. Does it make sense for us to be a party to examine the possibility that that might take place? She's not saying that you've committed any expenses. They're saying that the probability that they would keep within their budget. There's this possibility that they may go over budget. But does it make sense for us to examine the ability to bring in $600,000 in revenue?
Well, they've already made the decision to examine it. They're asking us if we are in favor of the project because of the money or not.
Or if you have any concerns or issues you want us to explore. This is really your opportunity to say, hey, we want you to look at these issues as you explore it. So it's also an opportunity, you don't have to, at this point, I'm getting the impression that you haven't read the petition, but some of
Yeah,
you
so
have, yeah.
as chairman of the board, I don't want to take up a motion, entertain a motion, or further discussion on the merits of the project, because I don't think that's within our purview.
And it's not what we
But
requested.
can we weigh in on whether we want the 600,000 or not? Do we as a board want to
totally
see this
confused.
revenue?
I'm
I
totally-
think that's the question.
I'm totally confused about what you requested, because I thought I heard you say that before the Board of Selectmen voted, they wanted to get the various boards' views.
On whether this
She
is
asked
the
us,
project.
you're right, she asked us if we wanted to opine on the project, and I'm suggesting that as a board, we should not.
And so I then took that to mean that we were then looking at, okay, so if we are looking at the expenditure funds for, an unknown amount, what our proclivity is for supporting consulting studies and the like, should we go over
Can you
budget?
just reread, why don't you just reread the salient part of the letter?
So we.
What you asked us to do, just
The
reread
letter
it.
that I wrote did not request consulting funds at that point, and the Board of Selectmen has not been, the way that process would work is if staff determines we need it, it would go before the Board of Selectmen for recommendation and then come to you. At this point, there's no request, I'm just giving you as a courtesy a heads up that this may be coming down the road, given the complexity of the situation out there. We don't have those evaluations, we don't have those estimates, we're in the process of getting them and evaluating them. Those will be based on staff recommendation, what we hear from the public, and from different boards, if boards feel it needs an evaluation. This really is coming to all boards and commissions to let us know any concerns, issues you think the board needs to consider in making its decision, or if you have a strong opinion. Planning came forward and said they did not feel, in general, although they didn't take a vote, their consensus was that it did not, was not compatible with the POCD, although there were some areas that they identified that could be. Zoning, we've asked, would this be approved under regular zoning? They have not yet gotten back to us. So I leave it to you to decide what you would want to chime in on in terms of your evaluation, what concerns. Building looked at it and said they did not have an opinion on it. So there are different boards and commissions will take lots. It's very important to the siting commission that the land use boards weigh in, because they do look to what land use boards would do locally. That is a consideration for them. Our council recommended that we open it up to all boards and commissions, so that's what we did.
So I'd like to make a motion, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
To say that this board is favorably disposed to the project for purposes of the financial impact on the town. Or not for purposes, because of the financial impact on the town.
Second that. That's what
Dis-
you're looking for, right?
discussion?
Something limited to our,
Yeah,
something limited to
yeah,
our
so
purview?
Discussion?
I think, for me, it's what the likelihood is of spending significant tax dollars on the review, as opposed to the ultimate taxes that might come in.
Well, it's certainly going to be less than the 12, how many million was it?
We're talking about whether any review falls within the budget or possibly goes above it, and what are,
She has to have it separately approved to go above the budget.
Yeah, we're,
So-
yeah.
So
That would
if
have
we
to
don't-
come back to
If we want to
us.
say
Would have to come
no,
back
we
to
can
us.
say no.
okay.
I mean, the letter said evaluate the above captioned project. You'd asked each of the boards to evaluate, so I guess evaluate it from our perspective, okay, with the Board of Finance. We're assigned to evaluate the town's needs from a financial perspective. People are shaking their head, but correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're being asked, right, okay, we've come up with, we set the mill rate each year, and we have to determine how we kind of balance. So generally, I think we as a board would say, well, we support responsible economic development that would alleviate the tax burden and make us more attractive to homeowners and businesses, that we wouldn't have people trying to flee Simsbury because of the mill rate. And so,
$12 million.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I'll go back to my going concern comment. I don't know enough about this company to know whether it will be able to pay over 20 years that tax obligation, and if in 2 years they go belly up and they're not able to pay that, where does that leave the town? So I guess I would ask for the financials of Deepwater, the Deepwater company. If they're not online, I'm sure I can look them up and see what their balance sheet is like, how they're funded, whether they're taxpayer funded, whether they're, just their structure and their balance sheet.
They're hedge funded.
Well, I whatever it is, I'd like to just see what their,
Make the request, I don't know if they'll
what's their
provide it.
debt, what's their, I just want to see what their structure is.
They-
Hedge fund doesn't mean they just make gobs and gobs of money.
They do have, and I haven't looked at it, but there is a whole exit plan that the siting council requires them to have a decommissioning plan.
I'd like to see the financials of the company, given that this is their first solar project.
So you would like the board of select, I will request that of them. on the
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's important to see the, kind of the straight, anytime
done
you
a
make
bunch
an
of other
investment,
projects, but
anytime
not
you
so
make an
much.
investment, you do a credit analysis of who's going to be paying you the money.
It's going to be a special purpose vehicle. It only owns this asset.
Right, LLC, there's not going to be anything behind it.
No.
Well, but they have a bunch of other projects. This is
Yeah,
not
that-
their first
that
project.
doesn't
it's just
matter.
their
This-
first
this'll be
solar.
That only speaks to a track record, not.
They're not cross-collateralized in any way.
Can I just ask you to clarify so I make sure I get it?
I just want to see the financial statements of the Deepwater company, to the extent there are any. And again, there probably won't be if, like Rob said, it's a special purpose entity.
Okay.
what's frustrating to
I have-
me, I was to say, is just that, it's always useful to know when you're evaluating something, what the alternatives are from a financial perspective, and it would be useful to know what would be expected if the land were developed for other purposes based on current zoning.
The highest and best use analysis?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one, but I mean, it has, I don't
It's
know.
interesting, but if there's no developer
Right.
with a
It's been sitting
checkbook,
there for ages.
May I just hear the motion again as it was written?
yeah.
No?
Well, we're trying
No, there's a motion and a second that we're discussing.
we're discussing, okay, so we're discussing the motion whether we're favorably inclined based on the net tax revenue.
Right.
That's, so without looking at the
Yeah.
merits of the project.
The motion is to support the project.
This is what I started, I would listen to the tape if I was doing it, to advise the Board of Selectmen that this board is supportive of this project generally because of the favorable impact on town revenues.
Sounds good to me.
Is that what you?
Well said. Thank you for making it sound better than when I said it.
Yeah, Pamela, one more time.
Okay, to advise the Board of Selectmen that this board is supportive of this project due to the favorable impact on, town revenues.
Because the only other discussion I would mention is that without looking at the merits of the project, the town has, in the past, done some very good things and not such good things.
All right,
So we've had benign uses, like such as corporate office buildings that have been turned down, and had fields sit empty for long periods of time, and now we have apartment buildings being built, hundreds of them, on the land in front of Food Line Tower. And so I just would invite everybody to think about the alternatives. The land's not going to stay the way it is forever. That's, it's zoned
So-
industrial.
Should I be able to
residential.
make
Can I make an,
I was going to make can I see if I can make
Yeah,
an amendment?
please.
I was going to say, I'm more in supportive of, the board is supportive of projects that increase the tax revenue. It's not necessarily saying that we're in support of this project. I'm not so sure I know enough about the project
That's-
and the, the economic trade-offs that might take place. So any project that will increase the tax base is always something to be in support of.
Were we running for Congress?
I think it's fair, because it phrases it a little bit differently, such that if we like for me, if I like the credibility of the company, it allows me to do that. And if I don't think that it will be a benefit based on the company's financials, then it allows for me to go against it.
Hey, should we, I don't know how quickly you need an answer. I mean, should we be tabling this until?
no,
you
it has to
all-
be done
Needs an
today.
answer.
Has to be done today. or-
Because
And doesn't the siting council also look at the financial viability of the company? I mean, I think it's safe to say that if they're a fly-by-night company, they're not going to get approved by the siting council.
Once you get to the petition process, it really is about air and water and some policy issues. I don't know how much they do. I mean, one thing that would be very helpful to me is if after you do this motion, Derek makes the motion or whoever that says, we request the first selectman write to Deepwater to get a copy of the financial statements for analysis. Because then I can say the Board of Finance has requested that. That's a very powerful request for the siting council to see and for Deepwater to see.
We could do that.
I mean, if we were to amend it, because we've been asked to evaluate the project. I mean, it's a kind of a no-brainer, I think, to say that the Board of Finance is going to support any appropriate project that increases the tax revenue. So it's not really doing
So
anything
I'd be
for
fine
you.
with what you just said. We use the word appropriate.
So instead,
Say that again,
perhaps
Jeff?
rather than modify this to say we support any appropriate project that increases the tax base, I think that's true. I mean, of course we do. But, maybe what we ought to say is assuming that the project credibly yields significant tax returns, doesn't pose an environmental threat, and doesn't significantly diminish, property values in the area such that it would be a net revenue loss to the town. Make those assumptions, yeah, we support it. There's a lot of information we don't have. I mean, I'm not deep into this, sorry for the pun, but I just don't know all the impacts, but from a
Yeah.
revenue perspective, it's just hard to understand solar panels versus an industrial plant. That's all. And we want new schools, we want additions to our schools, we want to have our paths maintained, and we want all these things, and we will maintain the bucolic, environment in our town, but there is a balance. And so these are industrial zoned fields and residents.
Okay,
Take a
can-
stab again at.
No,
the
let's,
language?
I'm going to call for the question on this and then motion. And then if it passes, fine. If it doesn't, I'm going to make a alternative motion. All right? So it's
So
been
I-
moved and seconded.
Okay, I was going to propose compromise language that I think you'd all support.
You want to amend your own?
Yeah.
Okay, fine, please. I'm sorry.
That this board generally supports projects that increase the tax base.
I would second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right.
We have to
That's-
vote on the amendment first, or?
Oh.
Well,
I-
that was moved and there was a second on the amended.
Right.
All right.
So,
That's considerably, that's help. Is that helpful?
That is.
And then can we make the motion for Derek?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Derek?
Hopefully
Yeah, I'll
you
just
wrote it
make a
down, Derek.
motion
Can I-
to see the Gosh, I
Make
guess
it-
it would
don't-
be a
don't say
parent
fi- don't-
company.
Yeah, don't say financial statement. Say, may I make a suggestion
go
too?
ahead.
Okay. That the Board of Finance requests that the Board of Selectmen obtain the financial support package from the developer that indicates the financial strength, wherewithal, fundraising, and all other information necessary to support their ability to operate. You getting all this, Pamela?
And pay taxes.
Okay.
It's on tape.
I will.
Oh, yeah, this
All right,
is
so-
super important things.
Yeah, so it's the board,
I'm at
you got,
financial strength, wherewithal.
yeah, we request a financial package
Yeah.
from Deepwater
Wind.
Wind, is that an LLC? That supports their capability to implement, fundraise for, maintain, and operate, and decommission the project for its life in support of this project.
I'll second Derek's motion.
Okay?
That's well stated.
As articulated through Rob.
Because you won't get
Who's that man behind the curtain?
They'll send you a one-page financial statement on the LLC that was formed yesterday.
No, thank you, Rob.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. And could I just ask as well, I don't know if it needs a motion, but if you do, then I have to do, but I would like to see a fiscal analysis of the site to better understand what the alternatives are, the kinds of uses that could be proposed for the land and what the tax revenues would
We
be.
can certainly do that. That is beyond the scope of our finance or even our assessor, but we require a consultant. So if you're requesting us to recommend to the Board of Selectmen that we
Jeff,
do that.
I would submit that it's not, I mean, I understand your point entirely.
If it's
but
beyond the purview of
The
our,
likelihood, I mean, I would go with what Rob said, that
Is that beyond?
the likelihood of them doing it anywhere in the next 5 years, you know, who knows? I
And it
mean,
almost doesn't
Yes,
matter.
eventually something will be built, but
if it's beyond the purview of our
I
current
just don't
staff.
think we have the staff to do that. So we could, I mean, people do that, but it's a substantial
Right.
If it's beyond the
investigation.
purview of our current staff, then that's fine, but you certainly could ask the developer to do it. Developers do that kind of stuff all the time. So you could ask them for an analysis of the alternative uses of the land, and they'll put it together.
well, yeah, they just tell you 100 houses or whatever.
So they did do a very basic one in their application. You can take a look at that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Maybe just.
Lisa, could you point Jeff to that in the,
Absolutely.
thank you.
I'm unfortunately going to have to excuse myself. Think this has gone on just a little bit longer than I anticipated, but thank you.
All right, so
Apologize.
the record will show that Mr. Peterson left at 6:40. I promised him we'd be out of here before that.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize we had a
No,
deadline.
it's all good, it's all good.
I didn't get the memo, I'm sorry.
It's all good. All right, state budget update. Anybody have anything exciting, new?
About as dysfunctional as Washington.
I have a small update in my finance director's report. That was a little bit more of a placeholder in case they did, what they were gonna do.
Where did our audience go? Nobody left.
So if you'd like, I can just point to the page 3 of my finance director's report. Earlier today, they announced that the CBAC, the State Employee Bargaining Agent Coalition, did pass the concessions.
And of course, they
overwhelming
extended
amount.
the,
Which also, extends the no layoff piece, so. But why that's important, I suppose, is that it was referenced by both the governor and the Democratic caucus budgets as something hurdle that needed to be included, or, factor that needed to be included in their budget assumptions, so. But we'll see. And of course, we don't know that will be passed by the legislature either. So we'll wait and see. But yeah, there's really there's been a few over the last couple of weeks, additional proposals, usually short on details. But at this point, and we've gone through this dance for a number of months
Yeah,
now,
so
we're
just-
just waiting for real stuff.
Yeah, so there's still all kinds of options being discussed, and there's no real momentum into a deal, so rather than take up half an hour of
Yep.
would've, should've, could've. I would like to stick with what we have done and what we think we might do relative to the car tax. So we have billed the car tax at 32 mills, 31 for us, 1 for the fire district, and those bills have gone out. Do we bill those only once a year, or do we bill?
Twice.
Is that split twice?
Just one.
For the
Is it just
cars?
once? Oh, I thought it was twice.
The cars are with the July billing,
Cars
correct?
are just with July billing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you buy a car, you get a supplemental auto. bill.
Right, okay, all right. So we'll just stay tuned until, we won't do anything about supplemental bill until we, according, with the advice of council, have the authority or not to break the law and charge what we think everybody else is going to charge. All right, fair enough.
But as I understand it, the important point is both the Simsbury, both the Republicans and Democrats caucuses have indicated the intent to hold the towns harmless, so no impact at all is, that's what this.
I mean, that's, again, with the numbers that were released, the town-by-town runs for the Republican budget, yes, that was true. Some would say that their assumptions on how much they were going to cut other pieces of state government were pretty tough to get to. So, I mean, again, you believe it until you get to the final numbers. The Democratic budget also would say the same things, but there were no town runs released, so we don't know. I mean, even with one of those versions of the governor's budget, the overall ECS entitlement number actually didn't change, even though we were impacted by millions of dollars. That's partly because some cities went up, towns went down. So if you only see a overall line item number, we can't tell what the impact of Simsbury would be, so.
I mean, if that ultimately occurs, what will be very unfortunate will be that for those towns in Simsbury that have anticipated that, there'll be at least 1 year of significant overtaxation of taxpayers, because you'll have both the town increase, where we try to accommodate what we thought the legislature planned to do in terms of shared pain, and we'll have the legislature, they're going to have to come up with the money from somewhere, and it's not going to come from the sky, so it's going to be increased taxes on a state basis for our residents, which means that we'll
Well,
have the double whammy.
we have, I mean, let's cross that bridge when we get to it, but
Yeah.
the second tax bill of the year from us could be reduced.
No,
We
No,
can't
it
do
can't?
that.
Oh,
We're stuck with what we
Yes.
have.
we can't give a
No.
rebate?
no.
I
We're stuck for a
misunderstood
year.
that.
We set the mill rate for a year. Unless, maybe the legislature in their good wisdom will pass a bill
You
that
know what,
allows
this-
us to, but
But, yeah.
This is water way
let's,
over the
cross that
dam.
bridge when we get there.
Yeah, and it's why we didn't put in the full amount.
Yeah.
We only put in half, so we could be half right or half wrong, guaranteed. Either way.
The glass is half full.
Okay.
There actually may be that may be a little more of an open question, because there was proposed legislation that would enable that.
Yeah.
My understanding is it didn't pass, although, once again, this is all in the muddied water of what's going on, but,
When the music stops,
Yeah, that's when we'll assess.
there will not be enough chairs.
this we don't.
Well said.
Okay. So that's, the state budget update is that we're still waiting.
I just realized earlier in the year, we approved, based on your report, we approved this solar array at Simsbury High School for $57,000, huh?
That was grant funded.
Yeah, I'm surprised we didn't have a lot of opposition from everybody in the high school. That's shocking. There's gonna be a solar array there. Just saying.
I love it.
All right,
got the
next,
finance
other
director
Next,
report?
Finance Director's report.
It was in the report, that's why.
Speaking of the report, so I'll just briefly walk through it. We've essentially booked all of the fiscal 17 revenues at this point. Just a reminder, fiscal 17 expenditures, if they're incurred in June or in the middle of June, we're still booking those from an accounting standpoint. And,
That's fine.
and so we won't have our final numbers here for another few weeks on the expenditure side. But speaking of revenues, so I have a table here that shows some of our major drivers of our revenues. Building department fees are down significantly from where they were, from what we budgeted, and from where they were last year. You'll probably recall we collected $1.1 million last year. So some of this is really just a timing issue.
Perk.
We also have-
Thank you.
I went ahead and did a little table here in the lower half of the page that shows the last 4 years of budgeting. The building department fees. Back in 14, we budgeted 450,000, collected 650,000, so 200,000 more. Continued to increase the budget, and then, wouldn't you know it, had a year where the timing just wasn't right. What's been happening is a lot of these major developments, some of these apartment projects, they come in, they pay all their building fees at once up front. In fact, as I said here in the memo, if the Silverman Group, who's developing the Hartford property, comes in the next few weeks, which could easily happen, in fiscal 18, all of a sudden is going to be in great shape from the building fees.
Yeah, I mean, my recollection is that Joe, when it was Joe,
Mm-hmm.
instead of Sean, had, expected half of this stuff to be built by now, and it hasn't even been approved.
What has?
No, it's been approved.
Silverman's, well, I mean, I haven't done all
Right.
the.
I mean, my understanding is they could have come in, I mean, they literally could have come in June. I think they have approved
But
this
we're
in
way
June.
behind of what Joe was projecting, right?
We're actually
3
not-
years ago. but
Yeah,
no,
well, maybe his initial one, but the
Yeah.
last version, if they break ground this year, and I know David left, depends on how much they get done before October when we're rating it, but there's going to be impact already, but it's not going to
Oh,
be fully
sure,
built.
but it's not
obviously,
going to
by
be
October.
kind of at the timing that he
Right.
was telling us it would be.
Where are we on that? Where are we, do we have things waiting? Or the Silverman Group, do we have?
It's been approved.
Yeah, they're fully approved.
They're working.
I think it's the State Traffic Commission was the last piece. my
It's a big
understanding.
number. The fee number is
Yeah.
a big number, though. It's
Yeah,
over
absolutely.
$500,000.
Right, it could make up this
Well, it's
deficit.
important not to look at, especially those fees any one year, because the
Yeah,
projects come in.
right.
You look at the average over the years, have we been
Right.
fairly accurate, and the average is pretty.
Yeah, the average of the last 4 years, we've collected 700,000, which is what we budget. It's just some years you're going to have higher and lower. So now, of course, we used, last year, that excessive favorability we did use partially to justify setting aside some assigned fund balance. So it's not like we've gone and, spent all the money as it's been here. Keep going. I mean, education cost share, mid-year cuts, we discussed those back in January, or I guess it was February, when they were cut in December. So that was anticipated. But then on the positive side, conveyance taxes came in very favorable. In fact, there was one large real estate transaction just a few weeks ago that resulted in a very significant conveyance tax payment. So we collected $150,000 in just 1 month from conveyance taxes, believe it or not. So that line is up $182,000 favorable. Continuing on, we've discussed these before, but municipal revenue sharing, also known as the car tax reimbursement, that $220,000 that we did not initially budget because we didn't know about it when the fiscal year started. And then also the property taxes, the collection rate was very strong, 99.45%. Also a significant increase in the number of supplemental autos that were added to the rolls this year. That generated almost another $300,000 worth of tax revenue. So, this number is not final or audited. There's still some of these audit adjustments that they make us make year over year, but this is better than we were initially projecting. So it's good news. We were being a little conservative entering the last few months of the fiscal year. Again, fiscal 17 expenditures, I should have more information for the next meeting about where we end up, and we'll probably be doing transfers. You guys probably all remember in either the August or September meeting. And all right, now for Simsbury Farm Special Revenue Fund, unless anyone has questions about the other revenues, I can come back to that. Special Revenue Fund, unfortunately not a great year for the golf course. The expenditure budget is about $40,000 under budget at this point. Again, they're still booking a few more expenditures there. But the revenues are significantly down, about $140,000.
Hasn't stopped raining for 3 months.
It's been a lot of rain. It's been, like, play has definitely been down. And as I said in the report, I'm sure we'll be getting the subcommittee back together and assessing, drilling down into exactly what happened, what areas. Some of it's timing, some of it's having a good May, a good June, really a good April is helpful like we had last year. Not this year, but.
Joan proposed, I think, fees for the tennis courts now too, didn't you?
What?
Did you propose fees for the tennis courts, didn't you?
No, I never.
Oh, I thought you had, okay.
No.
God, pay for tennis?
Okay.
You have to pay for somebody to collect it, that was supposed to be more than what you get in revenue.
No, they're already sitting there at the office.
You could have coin-operated entry, and I'm sure we can figure something out for you,
Lock on the
Joan.
gate, there we go. All right.
And then just wrapping up, this is kind of a repeat of what I had in the prior report, but the supplemental appropriations, we did discuss, if y'all remember back in August, I believe it was, a supplemental appropriation request from the Board of Selectmen for a settlement of a lawsuit. At the time, Barb had suggested that we wait and see if the operating budget could just absorb the 27,000. And so far, again, we won't know for sure till we get through the next few weeks.
What
but
was this case? This was a police thing? Oh, yeah.
This is a very old
right.
employment case.
Yeah.
And it is currently, we've obviously spent the money, it came out of the police department's budget. But as of right now, it looks like we'll be able to cover that expense without needing the Board of Finance's supplemental appropriation. So then I just listed, just again for posterity and for my records, the two that we did approve this year are listed there.
I did note that in the fundraising envelope for the volunteer fire, there was a mention of their 60th year and a request that if you wanted to give a little extra, that would be a good thing.
We just talked about the state budget, and then just the last piece, information that David gave me earlier today. Just a reminder, 2017 revaluation is still going on. There will be letters, questionnaires sent out to about 1,600 homes that did not receive questionnaires, I guess, back in 2012. So it's more just an FYI and about that. And again, that'll be for properties will be valued as of October 1st, 2017, and we'll know the final valuation number in January of 2018. That's my report.
Great. All right, thank you. Other business?
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I think we should stay longer.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.